Today I'm going to show you how to get started with Python for Excel. It doesn't matter if you've never used Python before, I'm going to take you through everything step by step. The first thing we're going to cover is installing Python and installing the IDE. Then we're going to look at how to use OpenPixel to interact with Excel files. We'll look at Excel Wings and how to use it to interact with the VBA object model. And then we'll cover Pandas, the library for data analysis. And finally, we'll look at how to run Python from Excel events. All the code examples for this video are available to download from the description below. So let's go ahead and get started. If you like this video, then please click on the like button, and if you'd like to get notified of my upcoming videos, then click on the subscribe button and the bell icon beside it. So we're going to start by installing Anaconda, which you can find at anaconda.com. So this contains an installation that has Python, the libraries that we're going to use, and many other useful things. So we simply go to the individual edition and click on download and then save the file. Now when the file is saved, we double click and then just run through the installation. So everything in the installation, we're going to use the default. So you can just keep pressing next, I agree, and then next, next. Now on this screen, it may pause here for a couple of minutes, so don't panic if it does, just let it go until it's finished. So once that's installed, we're going to install Visual Studio Code. So that's going to be our development environment. So we go to Visual Studio, you can just Google it, Visual Studio Code, and we click on Download for Windows, or whatever platform that you're using. And the same thing, we're just going to save the file, and then when the file is saved, what we'll do is we'll double click on the file and then we will just go through all the defaults of the installation. So just next, next, and keep going and just let it install. So once we click finish, it will automatically open. And now at this point, if we want, we can make some selections. You can see dark theme is selected by default, but we can select light theme or anything we want. And we can go through this if you like to set it up. But the easiest thing is just to click on the tab at the top and just cancel it. We can always make the changes later when we're more familiar. So we can use File New to open a file. But there's one more thing we have to do, and then we're fully set up to run Python. We want to go to View, and we want to type in default, and then we want to click on Select Default Profile. So we'll be using this later, and this basically means that we have the same terminal as using Run command in Windows. So now we're set up and we're ready to run Python. So now we have Python installed and Visual Studio Code installed. What can we do? Well, we can actually go and get started writing Python code. All we've got to do is say File New, and you can see here that it asks us to select the language. Well, we don't need to select the language because when we save the file with a Python extension, it will automatically recognize it as Python. So let's just write one line of code, print welcome to Python, and then we'll save it. So we can do Control S to save, just like in any Windows application. And then we're going to call it first.py, and then we'll click on save. Now you can see that the color has changed. To run this code, what we do is we go to run, and we've got two options. We can run it with debugging and run without debugging. So in VBA, when we run the code, it's always basically in debugging mode. But when we run Python, we can choose to have it as debugging, which means it will stop if there's breakpoints. But if we run it without debugging, it means it ignores breakpoints and will just run straight through. So let's run it without debugging. So you can see that the output that we get here is in the terminal. Now let me just clear this. So let me run it one more time. And you can see it has welcome to Python. When we run it, it puts out what it's doing. You can see that it has the file names, it has the folders, and so on. And then at the end, it has welcome to Python. So it's not quite as clear as the immediate window in VBA, but it's the same result. We're still getting welcome to Python written out. Once we're set up here, we're able to run the code and we're able to see the output. So what we can do is we can write any Python we want. So you can get examples anywhere from the web and put them here and run them and try it out for yourself. So let's do a new one. Let's say name equals, and we'll say John Smith. And we want to print out the first name. So what you can do in Python is we can use the square brackets. We can say the starting position, and that's 0. So all arrays and structures and everything start at 0 in Python. And we say we want to take everything up to position 4, but not including it. So again, we run this code, and you'll see John appeared. So now we can run the code from Visual Studio, but what if you wanted to run the code, from somewhere else, like a batch file or from Windows Scheduler? Well, what we have here, the terminal, is actually Windows command. So in other words, if we do Windows key R and we run command, it opens up the window, which we used to call the DOS window because we can run DOS commands from here. And what we have in the terminal itself is the very same as the command window. So even though we're getting the output here, this is actually the same, and we can run commands from here. We can use CLS to clear everything. And if we want to run the file, what we can do is we can do Python like this, and we can do the file name. When we hit enter, you can see the result is John. Now if we change it, let's just change John, and we'll change that to Jack just to show. And let's run it again. You can see we ran it there, brings out the extra kind of bits of details about the file. But if we run it here, you can see that it just writes out Jack. Now the fact that we can run it like this means that we can use it in a batch file or we can use it in Windows Scheduler, and that's how we can run Python. When you're deploying this, you normally create the Python file as an executable. So one more thing to kind of explain about the terminal, so let's clear everything in the terminal, is that we can actually run Python from here. So in other words, if I type Python like this, I'm actually in Python at the moment. So I can actually do things like name equals, and let's say Jenny. And then I can say print name. And you can see it printed out Jenny. So often on the internet, when you're looking up examples of Python, you'll often see that they're done like this. They're done in kind of a command line Python. But for clarity here, I like to have the code within the Visual Studio file itself, because it looks more like how we write VBA. Now we can exit this by doing Ctrl-Z, and that will bring us back to the terminal. Okay, so now let's look at how we can manipulate Excel. And how we do it is by using our OpenPixel library. So to use it, we say import OpenPixel. Now this was included when we installed Anaconda, so it automatically installed this library, which is very useful. So one key thing about OpenPixel is that it's not actually talking to Excel. What it's actually doing is dealing directly with the file. So let me explain how files work in Excel. If you don't know about this, you may be surprised to find this out. When we have a file in Excel, like say we've got marks XLSX, so let's make a copy of this file. This is actually really a zip file that contains XML. So if I change this to zip, it's a zip file, and if I double click on it, you can see that it opens up, and you can see the different contents that's available here. And so all of these, we've got worksheets, we've got different stuff, are all XML files, and we can just open them like this, and you can see that it has XML. Now you can see even here, if you look, you can see chemistry, you can see literature, and so on. And these are the things that's in the actual file. So let me just explain that, or let me just show you that. When I open marks here, you can see we've got the student marks, and we've got the different subjects like history, geography, maths, and so on. And so if we flip back to the file here, what you can see is that we've got all the details in our worksheet XML file. So what's happening with OpenPixel is that it's just going to read this file. So you don't actually even need Excel installed. So how we read it is as follows. The first thing, just like in VBA, is we want to get the book. So we say book equals open pixel, and then we're going to use the load workbook function. So this is very simple. It's basically like the workbook's open in VBA, and we just put in the file name. So that's going to be in our sandbox folder, and the file is going to be called marks. And once we get the book, of course, we want to get the sheet. So we can get the sheet like this. We say sheet equals book, and then we use the square brackets, which you use a lot in Python, and we say class A. So that will give us back our sheet. So let's print what's in our sheet, and we'll say let's print what's at cell A10. And let's save this file, and then let's run it. So we do Control F5 to run. And you can see that what we got there was, it said cell class A, which is the sheet, and the range is A10. Now if we want to see what's actually in the cell itself, we do value, and let's run our code again. And you can see it printed out student 9, which is the value in cell A10. Now imagine that we want to make a change to that worksheet. So there's one thing you've got to keep in mind. So let's get rid of this. We can easily change like this. We can just say sheet, and let's say B15, and we're going to say hello. So just hello there. And so if we do this in VBA, what happens is hello there gets written straight to the worksheet. And the reason is because we're dealing with Excel, the application. But when we're using OpenPixel, as we've seen, we're dealing with the file. So when we make a change to the file, we've got to actually save it when we're finished with our changes. So we simply use book save. And this takes the same parameter, it's just the file name as we've used above. So now let's save it first, and then let's run our code. And so it ran okay, there was no errors or anything like this. So what we want to do is we want to open up our book and see if the change did indeed occur. So we go to marks and we open it up here, and you can see that it added hello there to B12 or B15. So let's close this again. And another useful thing that we often do in VBA or when we're dealing with Excel is we want to read through a range of items. So this is how we do it here. The first bit of code is the same, of course. We get the book, we get the sheet, and then we use a for loop like this. We say for row in, and it's going to be sheet, and we use the iter rows, which is short for iteration or iterate rows. In other words, go through the rows. And then what we do is we print out like this. So we do print, and then we do row. Now what's really nice about this is that this has parameters, and the parameters are like min row, max row, and so on. Let's just do it as min row, and min row equals 1. So we're going to start at row 1, and max row equals 5. So we're going to finish at 5. And the same thing with the columns then. We're going to start at column 3, and we're going to finish at column, let's say 5, we'll say 6. And we want the values, so let's say values only equals true. Now that should have a capital T. So everything is okay. We do Control S. Let me just clear our terminal a bit here so we can see what's going to happen. Now we hit Control F5, and you can see it printed out as we expected. History, geography, maths, biology, and the results for each. One of the reasons that Python is so popular is because of the Pandas library. So the Pandas library is a data analysis library that provides huge functionality for manipulating data. So let's have a look at some examples of using Panda. So we can use it very easy by typing import pandas as PD. And now we've got pandas available to us. So what we can do then is we normally read data into what's called a data frame. And once it's in the data frame, we can manipulate it. So we do data frame equals, and we'll do PD for pandas, and we're going to read Excel. Now we can do many different things. We can read from CSV files. We can get the data from many places. And all we've got to do then is just say the path of our file, and we've seen this one before. And we can use the defaults, but what we want to do is we want to use open pixel to read. So we saw that in the last section, and that's what we're going to have as our engine. So it means that's the way we're reading the file. So this gives us a lot of flexibility using engine because it means we can read in many different ways. So open PyXL. And this gives us access to the worksheet, and then the worksheet gets automatically loaded to our data frame. So let's have a quick look at the worksheet that we're going to be dealing with. And you can see it here. It's just a list of students and their results in different subjects, and of course the class that they come from. So let's start with something simple. Let's print out the names of the columns. So we can say results equals df.columns. And then we'll print the results so that we can see exactly what they are. Let me just clear this. And then let's run this code. And you can see that it printed out all the headers: students, class, history, geography, and so on. So let's do something even more interesting. Let's print out the first two rows. And we can use the normal way that we use Python to split our index. And we do it like this. We use iloc, and then we basically say we want to start at the first column and we want to read until column 2. So this will give us the columns at position 0 and 1, or sorry, the rows at position 0 and 1. So let's run our code. And you can see we got the first two rows, student 1 and student 2. Now imagine we want to get the first 5 rows, and we just want to get history, geography and maths results. So what we would do is we would say we've got the first 5 rows, and then we want to start at column position 2, which is history, and we want to read to 5 but not including 5. So we want history, geography, maths. Now let's run this code and see what we get. And you can see we got all the results for the students. So you can see it's very easy to manipulate data with pandas. It doesn't take a lot of code, so we can do a lot with just one line of code or one simple function. So let's look at another case. Imagine we just want to filter by all the students in class A. So what we can do in this case is we can say data frame, and what we want is we want to use class. So class is our header. And we want that to be, we want to get that as a string, and we want to say match. So it matches, and it matches A. So we want to get back all the classes, all the records where the class matches A. So let's run our code and see what happens. And you can see these are all the results from class A. Now there's many different ways we can filter. We can use contains instead of match. We can use the greater than sign, and so on. So for example, let's do the contains. For example, we can say student and students, and let's say that contains 2. So that should be student 1 and student 12. Now we run this code, you'll see that it gave us back student 2 and student 12 because they have 2 in the text. So let's look at one more powerful function that we can use with pandas, and that is group by. So we can split everything up into groups, and in this case we're going to do it by class. So we're going to split everything up by class. So now we've grouped by class, and what we can do then is do different things once we have them in groups. So there's many options, but what we're going to do is we're going to say get me group A, and from group A I want to get the mean. So I want to get the average of all the subjects from group A. So let's run our code, and you can see it gives us back all the subjects and the average for those subjects for class A. So if we wanted to do it for class C, for example, just change it to C, and then we would run the code again. So this is a brief look at what the pandas library can do. You can see it's very, very powerful. We can do a lot with data with just a few simple lines of code. And this is why Python, one of the reasons anyway that Python is so popular. Now we're going to look at the XLWings library. So the XLWings library, we import it like this. Import XLWings as XW. So what this library does is allows us to interact directly with Excel. So this is how we basically use VBA. We interact with the Excel object. So the first thing we always want to do is we want to get a workbook. So we can say workbook equals, and we'll say xw.books.open. And then we put in the name of the book. So very similar to VBA, as you can see. And once we get the workbook, we want to get the sheet. So we use the sheets object, and we'll say class A, which is the name of our sheet. And then we want to get the range, and the range is sheet.range. And of course, we use the normal that we use in VBA. So A1 to C, let's say C2. So let's print out this range.value. And we run the code and let's see what we get. You can see that we get students class history, student 1B and 38. So this is what we would have expected. This is reading, so let's try writing to the sheet. So the difference with OpenPixel is that we're reading from the file itself. So if we make a change to the file, it only goes to the file when the file is saved. But it's different here because we're dealing directly with Excel. So if we change a value in a cell, it will automatically update. So it will update straight away. So let's say A16, and we'll say the value equals, and we'll say XLWings. And let's say hello XLWings here. Now that should be hashed to comment it out. And let's hash this one out too, because we don't need it. And let's go to, we'll open the one we were dealing with previously, and that is our marks. So let's open marks, and you can see that we have marks here. Okay, so if we run the code, I'm just going to make this smaller. So if we run our code, you can see that it wrote out to our worksheet here. So we didn't have to save the file or anything, and this is because it's talking directly to Excel. So okay, so this is pretty much the same as what you would see if you're dealing with VBA. So obviously if we're using Python, we want to have some advantages to using it over VBA. What we can do with our ranges is we can use pandas. So let's add pandas here. We do import pandas as we did before as PD. And then what we can do is we can read a range. So we can read the range, let's say A1 to C13, and we use options and we use data frame. So PD, and we use data frame and then value. And this is going to be our data frame. So again, once we have something in a data frame, we can do anything that we want. So let's close this file when we're finished with it. And let's print out our data frame just to see what we have. So you can see it printed out class history students there. So A1 to C13. Now, once we have it in the data frame, we can do many different things with it. But one thing I really like in XLWings is that we have this thing called XWView, and we can take our data frame, and what we can do is just write it straight out to an Excel worksheet. So this is really useful. It'll open the Excel worksheet, write it straight out to a table so that we can view it instantly. And there you see the results are in our table. So this is very useful for when we're testing code, writing code, to see exactly the results that we're going to get. Now, as I said, once it's in a data frame, we can do all the stuff that we were doing in our previous examples. So if we wanted, for example, we could get like the first couple of rows. We could say df equals df and just give us the first two rows. And then we run our code, and you can see that it did. And it opened up a new workbook with the results in it, which is very useful functionality. When we're using VBA, we normally run the code when some Excel event happens. So for example, a button is clicked, or a cell changes, or a sheet is activated. So we want to do the same with Python in many cases, and how we do it is that we handle the events in VBA and then we call the Python code when the event occurs. Now to do this, what we need to do is install the XLWings add-in. So we do the XLWing add-in like this. We go to our Anaconda prompt. So if you don't know where to find it, just go to the start menu and just search for it there. It'll show up, and then you'll have XLWings add-in installed. Now mine is installed already, so you'll probably get something a little different. And you can see it said successfully installed the XLWings add-in. Please restart Excel. Now after you've done this, when you open Excel, Excel will be ready for you to put the add-in in place. So the add-in will be on your hard drive, and what you've got to do is copy it. So let's open the folders. You'll have a folder where the packages are, and that folder will be something like this. Wherever you've installed Anaconda, you'll have library, site packages, and XLWings add-in. So you've got to copy this file to your add-in folder. Now if you want to find your startup folder, you can do so in VBA itself. Just go to the Visual Basic Editor. We just print out application and startup path. And you can see this is our startup path. And so we can just copy this and then we can use this in our Explorer. Now you can see I've already put it in, but if you don't have it in or you have the wrong one, let's just go back here. So imagine you don't have the right one. You can just paste it here, hit enter, and then it shows up. So you basically just copy from the other folder into here. You can see I've already got it done myself. And then when you restart Excel, what you'll see is as follows. You'll see XLWings appear on the ribbon. So it's automatically filled in these different paths and you don't have to worry about it. What we want to do now is we want to run Python code from VBA. So when some VBA event occurs. So we've got some simple Python code here. And what this is going to do is when it's called from VBA, so we're going to click a button in Excel, that's going to run VBA. And then this code will run and it will write call from VBA into cell A1. So how do we do it? Well, let's go ahead and look at VBA. So in the VBA editor, we create a sub. I'm going to call it run. I'm going to call it Python code. Now the next thing we want is we want to have a reference to XLWings. So make sure that you have the reference. Now I've got it checked on here. If it's not checked on, make sure that you do. And once we do that, then we have access to run Python. So we can say run Python. And what we put in here is the name of the file. So the name of the file is Python call from VBA. So we do import Python call from VBA. And then we put in the name of the function, which is main. And that's all we've got to do. And now we'll go to our worksheet and we'll insert a button. So we go to the developer tab, we select insert and we select the button. So let's just have a big button here and we select run Python code. So let's click on our button and see what happens. And you can see that the text call from VBA appeared. So we clicked on the button and then the button called this run Python code sub, which in turn then called the Python. So it called the Python call from VBA file and within that it called the main function. So that's how easy that it is for running Python code from VBA. Now in this case we did a very simple example, but of course in other cases we might want to do something much more complicated with Python, or otherwise what would be the point of calling it? Now imagine we want to run VBA code from Python. So how do we do it? It's actually very straightforward. So we've got a sub here, display text. And what this is going to do is it's going to display a message box with the text that we provide as a parameter. So we're going to run this from Python. So just like before, we use XLWings and we open the workbook. And then we can get access to our macro like this. We say display text and we say that's going to be assigned to the workbook macro. So you see, very easy. And all we've got to do is put in our macro. So we put in the module, which is module 1, and display text, which is the name. So now that we have our macro, we can just pass it the value like this. We'll say I was called from Python. So let's save this And then let's run our code. And when we switch to Excel, you can see that I was called from Python appears as a message box. Now the Python code is still paused. We click OK. And then when we switch back to Python, you see that it has just completed. So this is how we call VBA code from Python. I've covered a lot in this video, so let's have a brief overview of the main points. So we can set up Python by installing Anaconda and Visual Studio Code. We use the OpenPixel library if we want to interact directly with Excel files, so we don't need to have Excel installed, and this makes it quite quick to use. Pandas is a powerful library, and this allows us to do many type of data analysis tasks. Excel Wings package, it allows us to interact with Excel just like VBA does. And what we can also do is when Excel events occur, like worksheet change events, we can run Python from VBA. And one more thing we can also do is we can also run VBA very easily from Python. All the code samples for this video are available in the description below, so make sure to download them and try them out for yourself. If you liked this video, then please click on the like button, and if you'd like to get notified of my upcoming videos, then click on the subscribe button and the bell icon beside it.